Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. I recently saw some stuff online that Garry Kasparov talked about his game against Deep Blue. Now this game actually had happened like decades ago, and I think he's still kind of like hung on it. And back then, Deep Blue made these weird moves that kind of confused Kasparov, and he overthought everything. Like he was just thinking too much, and it led to making a lot of mistakes. If he hadn't thought for so much, probably he will at least not lose that game, maybe make a draw or even win it. Even though it happened decades ago, but still, I think he is feeling really bummed about it. There's actually, if you guys know, that recently there's also a new French movie about Garry Kasparov playing against Deep Blue. If you are into these sort of things, you can actually go and check it out because I've heard from a few of my friends that they have already watched this movie and they think it's actually pretty good. So definitely you guys can also check it out. Um you guys can by looking at the movie you can get a better idea of what is really went down, what really happened back then. I've heard a lot of stories about Garry Kasparov and from other people. Supposedly he even ran for president in Russia, and it actually didn't end well. It didn't go so well, and he lost. Actually took a big loss, and then went to the USA, went to America, actually pretty feeling pretty down. And actually there are more than tons of stories about him, which makes him actually a really a unique player in the chess world. And speaking of Garry Kasparov, he is now back to chess again, and actually he is in participating in a in a recent tournament, the 2024 Chess 9LX. This tournament was actually included many top players, and let's quickly take a look at what this tournament is all about, and then we'll go into the game. The 2024 9LX Chess is an over-the-board chess 960 tournament featuring 10 star players. For those of you who don't know chess 60 is, it's actually a game where both sides, they start with all their pieces in the wrong order, just in mixed orders. The pawns are still on in front of all the pieces, but the pieces behind, the rooks, the bishops, the knight, the queen and king, they're all in mixed orders. And these are the players. You guys can basically quickly scan their names. They're all 10 star players. And and you can see there is Garry right there. And the format. The 9LX chess is a 10-player round robin in the chess 960 variant. The time control is 20 minutes for the entire game with a 10-second increment per move. It's actually a pretty fast time control, not classical games, but rapid games. And pieces start in a semi-random position. 10 players compete in a round robin, and this is the time control, and this is the prize. The tournament is held again in St. Louis, Missouri, and it will take place at the World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis. Alright, this is what basically this tournament is all about, and now, actually this tournament has already ended a few days ago, but still the games are worth for us to take a look at still. And now let's take a look at this game. This game was played in round 9, the last round of the tournament, and white is Garry Kasparov and black is Sevian. And alright, in this game you can see the pieces, they're all placed on not where they should be in standard games, and you can see that black is doing the same. And it's actually pretty interesting because now in chess 960, basically there's just no openings. No openings can appear. And basically what both sides need to do is just quickly get into normal middle games and end games. At least it will be more normal. But although like in the opening stage of the game, both sides just need to play what they think is the best. There are no openings, and yeah, just play. All right, Garry S. White started with d4. No, not d4. You see, I was actually the reason that I thought this was d4 because this is like the queen's pawn, but here actually it is e4. It's actually pretty confusing, but you'll get used to it if you like take a look at more of these games. E4 and f5. E takes f5, rook takes f5, and knight e3. You can see that black is developing the rook, but white also can like develop the knight and attack it, and the rook just now runs back to f8. f4, g6, opening up the diagonal for this bishop. And here c3 was played. Of course, you don't really want to allow black's bishop to keep like the entire pressure on the b2 pawn, especially because that will be kind of annoying. And that is why in the game c3 is played. And after c5, starting to like push all the pawns up the board and create more space. Here, white plays g3, doing the same as black is, opening up this diagonal and putting a lot of pressure on the b7 pawn. And actually, here, the main difference is that white has c3 to blockade this diagonal, but black has already pushed c5, which means that there's no c6 anymore, and this diagonal cannot be blocked. If black wants to block this diagonal, then he'll probably have to go e6, d5. Knight dc6, queen e2, developing the queen, and knight a6. Probably here black's idea is to go like knight c7 here, and knight a3. White is doing the same. You can see that both sides are just developing their pieces. And here, just to inform you guys that in chess 960, they're like castling, short castle and long castle, they still exist, but it's just like in a different way to make this castle moves. Here you can just see how black castles. Black here castled with long castle. You can see just swing the rook over to this side of the king, and this whole move will be finished. Long castle is played, like queenside castle is played here. Knight b5, d5, and knight c2. Basically, black is now threatening to go d4, which is actually really deadly because opening up files in the center as well as like gaining more space. If here white goes, long castle, like here, long castle, then actually black can just, not go d4 immediately because there's bishop takes c6, but you can actually first of all go king b8. You can go king b8, and in the end you'll probably have to go for something like d4 because black is about to go d4, and if white goes d4, then this diagonal will be blocked and the bishop will be kind of passive inside the pawn chains. Okay, and that's why in the game knight c2 was played, gaining more control of the of the d4 square, and in the game e5 was played. Black is using because black is developing pretty fast, much faster than white is, black is choosing to open up the center first. And here white played long castle. Actually, this is a mistake by Garry. What he should have done is actually just to take on e5, and after queen takes e5, or let's say actually queen e5 is the best move. Other moves like knight e5 are not good because you after rook f5, not rook f5 but rook f8, queen f8, there's now d4, and after takes, for example, knight c d4, knight c d4, white's knight will be actually pretty active in the center, and then probably later on long castle ideas, and I think white should be doing fine. Because again, this bishop is being blocked by the d5 pawn. The d5 pawn is the center isolated pawn. So yeah, I think white will be able to put more pressure on the pawn in the future, and white should be much better. But unfortunately in the game, after f takes e5, queen e5, the reason that queen e5 is better is because it doesn't really give white any counterplay. After queen e5, if white were to take, actually take is not good because there's actually now rook f1, and after queen e1, let's say takes, there's now d4. Black is able to open up this diagonal for the bishop, and actually white is just a little bit slow in development. If white goes like long castle right now, well, unfortunately there's bishop c4. This knight is in this like in some trouble, and black is actually already gonna win here because after knight e3 there's bishop e2 to trap the rook. But in other words, after like queen e5, the best option here for white is to go queen g2 to swing the queen to this diagonal, put pressure on the d5 pawn, and I think white should be doing fine here. But unfortunately in the game, Garry, instead of playing like f takes e5, played long castle, which is a slight mistake. Because now black actually missed the opportunity here, but instead played e takes f4, which is actually a miss. What black should have done instead is actually just to go e4, and actually already after e4, black is much more comfortable or already in his comfort zone, because you can see that these two bishops are actually much more passive than these two bishops. This h8 bishop has this diagonal all to its own hands, but this h1 bishop, on the other hand, is being blocked by the d5 and e4 pawn, just like eating or looking at a wall. And this bishop, like, it is putting some pressure on the c5 pawn, but it is right now being protected by the knight. And this bishop on g8 can always become active after d4 pushes, so black is better here because his pieces are much more active. But instead of playing e4 here, black played e takes f4, deciding to open up the position. And after queen e8, rook f e8, rook takes f4, and now d4. Actually here, black is still slightly better, but giving white some chances to develop the rest of pieces. C takes d4. Of course, like c takes d4, you might say it looks like this move looks kind of ugly because it is creating a weakness on d2, but there's basically no better choices. If you go for something like, I don't know, if you go anything else like king b1 or like for example defending the a2 pawn, there's actually now not d3. d3 is not a good move. It might look a bit scary attacking the knight and also creating more space, but there's just knight e3. You'll opening up diagonals for white's pieces, like for bishops, and also creating a good square for the knight to jump to. But what black can do here is actually to go g5 first to attack the rook, and after, for example, rook f2 or rook e4, I think there's now not bishop d5 because there's rook e8, but down rook f8. Black is ignoring the trade and going gaining control of the f file, and here black is better because his pieces are more active and also the pawns are pushed higher. But in the game, instead of going king b1, Garry did find the best move, which is to go c takes d4, and after knight a b4, knight takes b4, knight takes b4. Right now, the a2 pawn is under under attack, but white is not going to worry about that because he can take on c5, and after knight d3, Garry here is actually giving up half of his piece. Because after king c2 takes, you can see that black is now up in material. But actually, even though you just count everything, and you can see that black is up in material because black has a rook for a knight. But actually here, white is much better. And the reason for that is, first of all, you can see that white is up 2 pawns, and also white has the bishop pair. Even though black has the bishop pair as well, but white has a much more powerful bishop pair. You can see that the bishop is now looking at both of these diagonals, and also white is threatened to push d4, d5. These pawns are actually really strong once they're pushed much higher up the board, and also white is threatened to take on a7, also knight d6 threats. And there's so many threats that it's hard for black to prevent all of them. In the game, king b8 was played, and king b8 actually defends the a7 pawn as well as runs away from knight d6 threat, but it's not a good move. The best move here is actually, well, in human eyes, it's actually a pretty hard move to spot, but it's the only move that to keep the position close to equalized, and that's to go a5. And after a5, the main problem is that after knight d6, rook d6, c takes d6. First of all, black can here just go like a4 to keep on pushing the pawn and a3 and to create a huge space on the queen side. But of course, this idea is just way too hard to spot in human eyes, and it's actually pretty reasonable that black didn't play this and instead played king b8, which is the second best move, but considered as a mistake here. Knight d6, rook e7, bishop e3. This is like a slight mistake. What white should have done is actually to go bishop f2, because the bishop is much more better than like on f2 than on e3. It can now is threatened to go bishop h4, lots of threats going on. But if you go bishop e3, the bishop just acts like a pawn here, defends the f4 pawn and everything, and also blockades this e file. Like probably Garry thought that blocking this e file is good for white because black is the side who has two rooks, but still like the bishop stays better on f2. However, bishop e3 was playing the game after b6, b4, and after bishop a2, f5, rook e3. Now here actually there's no other like choices for black but to take on e3. Other moves like b takes c5, for example, and after, let's say, well, actually there's just bishop g5 here. But for example, if you go like there's just no way to stop bishop g5. If you go bishop f6, but now there's just bishop f4, like all of these diagonals are open and the king is in real big trouble because white is threatening to like move away the knight, and it's actually a discovered attack, and it's actually really deadly. That is why in the game rook e3 has to be played, and after d takes e3, g takes f5. Probably a better option will be to go bishop e5, use this pin, and to like quickly trade more pieces, especially this knight off the board, because this knight on d6 is actually really like powerful. It can do a lot of damage if black keeps this knight on the d6 square. So it's best to trade it off. And after but instead in the game, like instead of playing bishop e5, g takes f5 was played, and after bishop d5, trading off the bishops, forcing a trade, takes. Now it is a knight versus bishop endgame, where both sides have 4 pawns, but the knight is much more active than the bishop. a5, b takes a5, and b takes c5. Now, what white needs to do here is actually, because like you cannot take because you lose the knight. So this means that white needs to get the king up the board now to take this pawn, and that is what Garry is doing in this game. Here he played king b3, going king c4 ideas, bishop e5. Now this is actually a really good move because after rook takes e5, rook d6, at least black is now successfully getting the minor pieces off the board and trading into a rook and pawn endgame. And rook and pawn endgames are have the highest drawing possibilities in all endgames. King c4, rook h6. Now it's just a matter of your skills and knowledge of endgames. Rook h2. This is still a draw. Takes. This should be a dead draw, but black played here king b7, which is a blunder. And actually there's just e4. What black should have played is actually just to, and the only move here is actually just to go h5. Speed here is really important. The higher you push your pawn, the slower that white will be pushing his pawns, because later on in the game white needs to swing the rooks over. Then you can use this, as black, you can use this time to get your rooks to the other side to gobble up white's pawns and make it a draw. But in the game, with only 43 seconds left on the clock, black here played king b7, which is a mistake. It looks pretty logical, really, just to get up with king a6 to eat this a5 pawn, but it's just too slow, too far away from the action. And after e4, white is now one step further to promoting the e pawn, and black is still way too slow. Rook a2 attacking the a5 pawn, king d6, king a6, rook h5, and rook d2. Now, if you take on a5, this is just a dead loss. You just take, and then white will promote, basically. White is much faster than black is, so there's just, it's just winning. Queen. That's why in the game rook d2 was played instead, but after king e6, just hiding behind the e6 pawn. And this is actually just a winning position, because even if you had this a5 pawn off and you just have the e pawn and without the h pawn as well, this is also a winning position because the king is too far away from the action, and white will be able to cut the king off with the rook later on. Rook e2, but white just now pushes the pawn after king a5. King d6 will probably not the most accurate way to win. The most accurate and easiest way to win is just to take this pawn. Take this pawn, king b5, you just like cut the king off, and this is just a like very easy win. You just need to build the bridge later on. And but however, in the game, king d6 was played, which is making the job slightly harder, but of course still winning. Rook d2, king e7, king b6, e6, king c6. But the main problem is that black's king is now pretty close to the action now, really. And like if white were to like cut it off 2 fouls from the pawn, then it will just be a very easy win. But now right now, allowing black's king to get this close to the pawn is not a good thing, but of course this is still winning. Rook h7, rook a2, rook h1, rook c2, rook f1, and after a few moves like this, of course, Garry knows how to win this rook endgame. And after rook h8, now rook f8, and here after rook h6. But here after rook h6, black resigned immediately because he knows that there's no way to draw this game here. And of course, there are no challenges for white to win anymore. It's just a very easy win. And of course, Garry knows how to mate with king and rook against king. And here black resigned the game and Garry won. This game was actually played pretty well by Garry. He had an accuracy of 94.8, and in the end game part, he is pretty experienced. He played all of the best ways to win, not the best way, but all accurate moves basically, and in the end he won. This game, again, chess 960, there are no openings in this variant, but basically what both sides need to compete against each other is the middle game skills and the end game skills. Alright, so I hope you guys learned something from this game and enjoy this game, and please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!